Hi everybody, my name is Kendra McCormack and I will be presenting my marketing plan on Fulton Beer to potential investors. Fulton Beer is a craft brewery in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It began with 4 local guys brewing beer in their South Minneapolis garage. Eventually, they opened their own brewery as demand skyrocketed. As part of my marketing strategy, I will be discussing the current marketing situation, opportunities and issue analysis, objectives and goals, our marketing strategy, an action plan, profit and loss financials, and then I'll wrap it up. Here's a little overview of the situation. There are about 393,000 residents in Minneapolis, with 43.8% of the population being between 20 and 44 years old. The median household income is $44,478. The median family income is $59,816. And so there's about one craft brewery in Minnesota for every 112,000 Minnesotan residents. Minnesota is the number 10 craft beer producer in the United States, and in 2011 there was an 80% increase in barrels produced in the United States. The American Brewers Association says that the craft beer consumption has steadily increased for the last 5 years. Our main competition in Minnesota are the local microbreweries. A microbrewery is defined as a small independent and traditional brewery with a production size of less than 6 million U.S. beer barrels. There are 50 craft breweries in Minnesota and over 2,300 craft breweries in the USA. Minnesota brewed about 308,000 barrels last year, while Fulton only brewed about 3,100 barrels in 2012. That means that Fulton only has a 1% market share in Minnesota. Fulton has several strengths in terms of marketing. One of Fulton's strengths is that they are the classic story of guys just brewing in their garage and able to make it into something that they now do for a living. Another strength is that they have amazing design on their packaging, marketing materials, the tap room, and the brewery itself. Fulton appeals to a mass market and can be considered family-friendly, with board and lawn games at their tap room, food trucks, and selling their own homemade soda for those who are underage or who are not interested in beer. A very large strength of Fulton is their location next to Target Field, otherwise known as the Twin Stadium. They're able to draw a large and varied crowd on game days that may not have been interested in visiting a tap room otherwise. And another strength is the tap room itself. In 2011, Minnesota passed the Tap Room Law, or Surly Bill, that allowed breweries to sell pints of beer in tap rooms at their breweries. Fulton was the first one to open in Minneapolis and is able to garner a large revenue stream from it, and also to experiment with new types of beer by having taproom only specials to see if the consumers like it before going large scale. Some weaknesses of Fulton include the number of beers they have. They only have 4 beers while competitors offer more. Granted, they do experimental beers at the taproom like I just mentioned and have seasonal beers. The Fulton owners have very limited experience in brewing and had to learn along the way, while competitors have brewmasters who went to school for it and trained at different locations. Fulton is relatively new to the market, only being 4 years old, while major competitors like Summit and Schell's were created over 30 and 50 years ago. And the brewery itself is a weakness. They are already at capacity with the space that they have, so expansion is impossible without some extra space. Opportunities for Fulton include the popularity of craft beers at the moment, the locavore movement, which means people trying to eat and drink products that are locally made, and the neighborhood is seeing more and more new businesses. Threats include a potential market saturation, with over 50 microbreweries being in Minnesota. The larger breweries are always a major threat because they have almost unlimited resources. Production restrictions are a threat because there are standards on what a microbrew can produce. Legislation is a huge threat when dealing with alcohol. The taproom bill was passed, and a recent piece of legislation just passed that raised the amount of barrels a microbrew is able to produce and still sell growlers from 3,500 barrels to 20,000 barrels. But what happens when Fulton surpasses 20,000 barrels? They will no longer be able to sell growlers due to this. Also, the brewery size itself is a threat. So an analysis of Fulton's opportunities and issues is that we need to capitalize on craft beer's popularity, continue to garner relationships with local policymakers. Mayor R.T. Rybak is a huge proponent of microbreweries. Utilize the location next to Target Field to our advantage, and make sure differentiation is key in our strategy, and also continue to brew great beers. Some of the objectives and goals of this marketing strategy are to increase production to 7,000 barrels, increase market share in Minnesota and become the number 7 producer, differentiate Fulton Craft Brewery from the other craft breweries in Minnesota, and become a destination in Minneapolis. The people who drink Fulton beer are male, white, make an average of $55,000 a year for an income, are college educated, and are between 21 and 44 years old. Here's the target persona that Fulton Beer appeals to. AJ is a 24-year-old male millennial who lives in the western suburbs of Minneapolis, Minnesota. He is a consultant in the informational technology business whose income is in the mid-50s. He looks forward to moving up in his agency's career ladder and graduated from the University of Minnesota with an applied economics Bachelor's of Science degree. He decided to stay around the city due to his current relationship and great job market opportunities. AJ is on several recreational sports teams. He values his friends and enjoys drinking a great quality beer with good company, especially if he gets to play a game of bags or ladder golf while doing it. He is interested in one day attempting to make his own home brew and is excited about owning his own home soon so that he would be able to do so. Two market segments that I feel other craft brewers are not focusing on are women and Generation X. Right now, they are too focused on appealing to millennial hipsters and should also pay attention to women who are more likely to prefer more flavorful brews. A gender neutral campaign would achieve reaching this market. Generation X is more likely to pay a little extra for a good beer, and with their location so close to a family-oriented staple like Target Field, Fulton should make sure it appeals to the older generation as well. Fulton has 4 main beers, not including the experimental beer that they rotate through. The first beer is Sweet Child of Vine, an India Pale Ale. Lonely Blonde is an American Blonde. The Libertine is an Imperial Red, and the Worthy Adversary is a Russian Imperial Stout. They are sold in 750 milliliter bottles to retail locations, kegs to restaurants and bars, on tap at the tap room, and in 64-ounce growlers only sold at the tap room. The tap room is open Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and on Twins home game days. Tours of the brewery are free 3 times on every Saturday. Fulton Beer is available at 250 local area establishments and can actually only be found in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. Fulton Beer costs $5 for a pint at the tap room. It's between $13 and $18 for growlers at the tap room, depending on which type of beer it is, and there's a $5 deposit on the growler itself. The price at retail locations varies by the establishment. As part of our pricing strategy, we'll offer free tastings at the tap room and have a $5 discount on growlers on game days to market to a group of consumers who may only be there to have a beer before the game but entice them to buy more. Some promotional strategies include advertising at retail locations, posters at liquor stores, coasters at bars and restaurants, a web campaign that includes an upgraded website, an e-newsletter, and increased social media. Also participate in craft brewery festivals around the state, like the Beer Dabbler, and create a Fulton Block Party that would partner with local businesses and create a fun, fully branded party for consumers. Our marketing strategy timeline includes creation, implementation, and assessment of the web campaign, making sure that our online presence is differentiated from other breweries in Minnesota by making sure to have competitor awareness of their online activities, create a calendar of beer festivals to weigh the pros and cons of participation at the tastings at the festivals, create advertisements based on gender and age neutrality and choosing appropriate locations, and then assessing them for our return on investment, and plan and implement the new Fulton Block Party to create an atmosphere of neighborly friendliness. Since Fulton is a few years old, equipment and lead acquisition costs have already been paid and the break-even point has been exceeded. Yearly costs will now be based on research, personnel, rent, and equipment upkeep, as well as promotions. And I based my end result on the assumption that Fulton will succeed in producing 7,000 barrels of beer this year. Thank you for viewing my marketing plan presentation on Fulton Beer.